So good morning. My name's Megan Tate. I'm Vice President of Community Impact at the Winnipeg Foundation. I know that you are all here today to learn more about multi-year grants. And I know you're excited to learn more about multi-year grants, and we will get there soon. But we have a little bit of a program that we wanted to go through just because we thought it would be really helpful to put what we're planning to do with multi-year grants into a broader context at the Winnipeg Foundation. So some of the things that we're going to talk about is just a little bit of an overview of the Winnipeg Foundation, what we do and who we are, some information about our current strategic priorities, a little bit of information about our overall 2025 calendar of grant intakes, and finally, what you've all been waiting for, information about multi-year grants at the Winnipeg Foundation. We can tell that people are really excited about this new grant program. Many of you have been calling and asking questions, and so we're really grateful for your patience. We really wanted to have this opportunity today for everybody to hear the same information at the same time. This session is also going to be recorded. It's going to be made available on our website, and for those who registered for the post-event follow-up, they'll also receive an email with the recording and other materials related to multi-year grants. So a little bit about us. Our vision, as it has been for many, many years, is a Winnipeg where community life flourishes for all. But what's new is how we framed our mission and our values. So over the past couple of years, our staff and our board have gone through an exercise where we really thought deeply about what is our mission as an organization? What are our values? And so our new mission is to inspire generosity, engagement, to foster transformational change for the well-being of our community forever. We're also really proud to share our updated values as an organization. So we've identified as our values trust, where we ensure transparency and integrity in our work and respect for all people and the earth in our activities. Generosity, we approach community and one another with love, empathy, and possibility. Equity. We identify, acknowledge, and help remove systemic barriers to so everyone in our community can thrive. Transformation. We achieve greater outcomes by coming together with curiosity and creativity. Responsiveness. We listen and commit to community priorities now and for all future generations. And so if you're interested in reviewing our values or learning more, you can also check out our website. So our current strategic plan, I have to get out of the habit of calling it our new strategic plan, although it still feels new to us, was launched in 2023. And as part of that strategic plan, we identified a number of pillars for our work. So one is community impact. You may have noticed I'm the Vice President of Community Impact. That's the role of the great team that I get to work with. We also have pillars in the areas of community generosity, community endowments, and being a community champion. So I wanted to touch on a few of those that would be most relevant to the folks in this room. I'll speak about community impact a little bit later because we want to get into a bit more detail about that. But want to flag that under community investments, we've committed to exploring different ways for community organizations to access funding, which primarily reflects access to capital. And so our board and our staff have been going through a journey of learning more about impact investing. And so we hope to have more to share about our strategy related to impact investing and how that can benefit community organizations in the new year. So a bit of our approach to how we came to have this strategic plan. We convened stakeholders. We are committed to providing material resources to the areas that we've identified in our strategic plan. And we also have conducted and plan to conduct going forward a range of research on the issues that our board has identified as a priority. Many of you may have also seen our vital signs report, which was released in early 2023. This was the second report and is really intended to be a snapshot of community well-being, looking at Winnipeg, our strengths, some of our challenges, and our opportunities for the future. The key findings from vital signs will have an impact on our grant making as well, as we're interested in where community partners like yourselves see yourselves within the vital priorities of sense of belonging, trust in institutions, mental health, addictions, hunger, and experiences of homelessness. So for those of you who've maybe submitted a grant application over the last couple of years, you might have seen an invitation to describe how your project aligns with some of those vital priorities. We also conducted a grantee perception report. We really value our relationship with you as community organizations that receive grants from us, but we also know that it can be challenging for groups to provide us with honest feedback. So we contracted the Center for Effective Philanthropy to conduct an anonymous survey of organizations that had recently received funding from our responsive grant programs. We've also hosted events called Share and Connect, where we've convened community organizations in a room to hear back from them. And the findings are very similar. So what we heard back from groups like yours are the need for longer and more flexible funding, the desire for increased interaction with the Winnipeg Foundation staff, maybe not quite so cozy as today, more transparency on funding decisions, and more non-monetary support from the Winnipeg Foundation. And so when my colleague Neneth talks about our multi-year grants program, you'll see how we've woven in many of these themes in what we're planning to do with multi-year grants. Finally, a little bit about the community impact pillar of our strategic plan. So first, I do want to emphasize that the Winnipeg Foundation remains committed to supporting the full range of charitable activities in our community. You may hear us talk about ourselves as a 360-degree grant maker, which means we will continue to support the arts, education, environment, health, community services, the full range of activity that happens in our community. At the same time, we do believe that the Foundation is uniquely positioned to respond to the community's calls for action by focusing our resources more deeply to create meaningful change. So you'll see this in both our champion pillars strategies, as well as our vital priorities. In addition, under the community impact pillar, we've laid out a number of strategies for ourselves. So first, we know that some communities are underrepresented in the allocation of philanthropic dollars. This includes, but is not limited to, organizations that are led by and serve Indigenous, Black, Asian, 2LGBTQ+, and disability communities. And we know this because of reports like the one prepared by Sharon Redsky and Mark Bloomberg that looked at Canadian charities giving to Indigenous charities and qualified donees, which found that in 2018, Indigenous groups received about $1 for every $178 for non-Indigenous organizations. Another report prepared by the Network for the Advancement of Black Communities found that in 2017 and 2018, giving to Black-led organizations was less than 1% of all giving in Canada. We've started conducting analysis of our own grants to see where our grant dollars go, and we know that there's work to be done to address some of those inequities. So our first measure of success for community impact is increasing equity in the philanthropic sector, in particular increasing the allocation of grant dollars that go to underrepresented communities. Number two, as I already spoke about, Vital Signs has identified the most urgent issues in our community. And over the next 4 years, we will track and report on our grant making in these areas with the goal of increasing the total grant dollars allocated to the Vital Signs priorities. And finally, we know that from speaking with you and listening to you that the needs of the charitable sector continue to grow, and the sector is continuing to be asked to do more with less. The last few years, and I'm thinking of COVID, but even beyond that, have been particularly challenging. So the foundations can't solve everything with our grant-making dollars and are looking for other ways that we can support the sector. We've also heard from grantees who responded to the grantee perception survey that you're looking for us to provide additional non-grant support. And so a third key strategy is to increase support beyond grant dollars to the nonprofit sector. So this could include providing capacity building support, for example, sharing technical knowledge that we have at the foundation, things like our agency fund program, things like I spoke to related to impact investing. So lots of exciting things on the go. Underpinning our strategic pillars are three very important foundational lenses. So we're committed to fostering values of diversity, equity, and inclusion within our organization and decision-making processes. And in addition, we're eager to learn from our community partners about what you are doing in this space. Truth and reconciliation is also recognized as a complementary but distinct lens in our strategic plan. And finally, climate change, which we acknowledge is one of the most pressing issues of our time. And the foundation recognizes also the connection between climate emergencies and issues such as poverty alleviation, health, equity, and human rights. So again, some of you who've maybe submitted a grant application to the Winnipeg Foundation recently would see that we've invited you to share your approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we thought, in the spirit of reciprocity, that we wanted to share our approach to what our board calls diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. It's an important focus of the foundation, not just in our grant making, but across our work as a foundation. And so the foundation is committed to learning and doing better, as we recognize that making positive change in DEIB requires listening to our staff, to our community, as well as experts in diversity, equity, and inclusion. The foundation believes that it's important to share this ongoing journey as we make holistic changes at all levels of the organization. And I should note that this is always something that the foundation has worked on, but it is something that has been explicitly named in our strategic plan and that we're making intentional efforts towards. So some of the things that we're doing include we conducted a formal diversity, equity, and inclusion belonging audit. This required us to do a survey of our staff, our senior management, our board, and our public committees to gather and analyze quantitative data on the demographics of who belongs to the Winnipeg Foundation, as well as their perspectives on DEIB. We're reviewing our operational and governance policies with a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. This includes reviewing our donor engagement practices, our grant-making practices, our fundraising, our endowments, really everything that we do. And finally, we're doing a review of our communications and our communication platforms with a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. So based on the audit that we did, we're creating an action plan with objectives, kind of clear measurements that we hope to achieve meaningful change within the foundation. And so over the past 2 years, we've achieved some of what we set out to do, but acknowledge that there's more work to be done. And finally, just to share that we've established an internal staff committee who's holding us accountable and ensuring that progress is being made on the action plan that we've developed as an organization. So a little bit about our grant making, and I will acknowledge these are slightly old numbers. Our fiscal year end is September 30th, so just a couple weeks away. So I'm not going to spend too much time on our 2023 granting because it is going to change over the coming year. But just to note that in 2023, over 1,000 charities were supported for a total of $85.6 million back into community. I think one of the things that's helpful to understand for those of you who are in this room is that you might be most familiar with what we call our responsive granting programs. And so that's when a community organization fills out an application, submits it to us for review, and we make a funding decision. But that's actually a relatively small portion of the overall grant making that the Winnipeg Foundation does. And so just wanted to draw your attention to this chart here. So you'll note that the largest share of our grant making actually goes out in the due to agency and designated funds. So an agency fund is one that's established by an organization like yours, where the annual income goes back to those organizations to be used at their discretion. A designated fund works very similarly, although it's an individual donor who's selected a charity or charities to benefit from the income from their fund in perpetuity. So you'll see it's actually the second line that is our responsive granting. So last year, that was $16.5 million in responsive granting. And then I just want to draw your attention to the orange bar at the bottom of the screen, which we call leadership projects. Those are also projects where the board has discretion for how to allocate those dollars, and those tend to go towards initiatives that align with the foundation's strategic priorities. So over the next few years, you might see this chart change a little bit, but just did again want to draw your attention to, of the $85.6 million, what we're able to allocate in response to applications from community. And this little chart just shows you, again, our commitment to being a 360-degree funder, in that you can see our allocations are somewhat evenly spread across different parts of our sector, with arts and culture at the top of the flower and health, wellness, and recreation at the bottom of the flower. A quick note about our donors. So as many of you, I think, know, the Winnipeg Foundation is a collection of permanent endowment funds. Those funds have been established by donors from all walks of life. And it's really what makes us a community foundation. So those endowed funds are pooled and invested, and each year it's a portion of the income from those funds that we're able to grant into community. I do want to spend a moment about one particular donor that we often get questions about. I guess it's been almost 2 years ago that the Winnipeg Foundation was able to announce an incredibly generous gift from Marion Bergen. And so, as I've shared before, that was a bequest. It was the gift of a company to the Winnipeg Foundation. And so there's a lot of complexity attached to that. But we are so excited to share that in the upcoming year, we will start to realize some of the impact of that very generous gift. And so you will see, hopefully, a little bit of an increase in the grant dollars that are going out to community. And so our board is just meeting in the next few weeks to figure out what that looks like. So again, we've received lots of questions about that amazing gift, and just wanted to share that with you today about what it looks like for the upcoming year. Finally, just a note on our upcoming calendar of intakes, the one you're here to learn about, multi-year grants. Those applications will be due Friday, November 1st. Next up is our Children and Youth Program grants. This was a new program that we introduced last year to replace our Camp and Summer Program grants. This program's a little bit more flexible. It doesn't confine you to only summer programming. For youth serving organizations, you can really put forward a broader proposal. And of course, leading up to that intake, we'll have more detailed information for community organizations who might be interested in applying for that opportunity. Then in March, we'll have an intake for community grants. And finally, in May, we will once again have our call for proposals for major capital grants. And again, specific to each of those programs, we'll have more detailed opportunities for you to learn more closer to those intake dates. Final thing that I want to share with you is a little bit of a change to when we accept applications. So if you've come to these information sessions before, you may have heard us talk about an end of day deadline. We found that that's been complicated for a number of reasons. So we'd now like to set our deadline for noon, hard noon, Central Standard Time, Winnipeg time, for our applications. This just allows us to better support community organizations who are submitting their applications. So just a note that unfortunately late applications cannot be accepted. And to avoid any complications, we really do encourage you to try to get that application in before the hard cutoff of the application deadline. And so that's kind of what I wanted to tell you about the Winnipeg Foundation and what we've got on the go right now. And so now I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Neneth Banyas. Neneth is the manager of grants at the Winnipeg Foundation. She's going to tell you everything you want to know about multi-year grants.
First and foremost, a warm welcome to everyone. It's nice to see new faces in the room today, and we're just so excited to share what we have for multi-year. So our focus today is to share a bit of an overview of the multi-year program, from eligibility, assessment criteria, to the application and review process, as well as support that will be available after this information session. But before I do that, I want to share a tool that we've developed to help you check if you're eligible in our grants portal for this program.
To be eligible for the Winnipeg Foundation's multi-year grant program, organizations must have successfully reported on and completed one of the following grant programs: community grant, which was also referred to as one-time community grants, or an ADAPT or COVID response grant. In this video, we'll share how you can check your eligibility. If you have applied for a grant in the past 3 years, you can confirm your organization's eligibility by accessing the online grant portal at wpgfdn.ca/grants. www.smartsimple.ca. To confirm completion of your community grant or ADAPT or COVID response grant, log in to the grant portal, scroll down to the heading My Applications, click both Active Grants and Historical Grants. Ensure your organization has a status of Approved, Complete, or Closed for a community grant or COVID response or ADAPT grant. Once you have confirmed that your organization was approved for an eligible grant, you may confirm whether you have any outstanding reports. To do so, click Action Items under the heading Applicant Portal. Any outstanding reports will be included in the list with a status of Scheduled. To report on a completed project, find the relevant application ID, click Open, and complete the report. Click Submit once you are finished. The grant portal will send you an automated email to confirm we have received your completed report. Thanks for watching this video, and we hope it was helpful.
So in our current strategic plan, under the Community Champion Pillar, we identified increasing the health of the charitable sector as a strategic priority. The last couple of years have been challenging due to the pandemic, and we have assisted many organizations like yourselves who are here right now in stabilizing, adapting to the new normal. These effects are still ongoing and are being felt by our community partners in various fields and across different sectors. So when you, our community partners, struggle, it negatively impacts the overall health of our city. And so the first goal of our multi-year program is to enhance the capacity of our community partners like yourself, which will result in increased well-being in the community. Our second goal for this program is increase in equity in grant making. This ties into our strategic plan priority that Megan mentioned earlier. And to accomplish this, our last goal for this program is to ensure that half of the recipients are equity-led organizations. So for the multi-year grants, community partners may request up to $150,000 per year for 4 years, so up to $600,000 in total. Funding is flexible. This means that the grant dollars that may be used at an organization's discretion to fulfill your mission, your mandate, and your strategic plan. So as an example, will be general operating or program dollars, as however you wish to use it. However, I want to note that grants must still be spent in alignment with our overall policy for this program. So it must primarily benefit the people of Winnipeg and must not be used for exclusively religious activities or re-granting or scholarships. Our application will open on October the 1st and must be submitted on November 1st at noon. You're going to hear me say that a lot of times today. So that's kind of like our time frame for the application and the deadline. So in terms of eligible organization, community partners must be registered charities or qualified donees. Also, they must be based in Winnipeg and adhere to the Manitoba Human Rights Code. I want to emphasize that for all of our granting program, we make granting decisions based on the merit of the application and does not discriminate on the basis of actual or perceived group characteristics as identified in the Manitoba Human Rights Code. Our expectation is all applicants and community partners must also adhere to the Manitoba Human Rights Code. Last, community partners must completed and reported on a recent grant. So in terms of, I'll dig in a little bit more what that recent grant means. So to expand this further, we require that organizations have completed and reported on either a community grant or an ADAPT grant in the past 3 years. So if we count backwards, starting this year, groups must receive a grant in January 2022. So, and then in terms of the final report, You could also check that on your grants portal. And in order to do that, you will need to go to, on the portal, there's a section that's called Action Items. And you click on the action items and you will see the outstanding reports that you might have for your organization. So in terms of national organization, if you are a national organization, you may also apply, but must demonstrate the following. That you have been operating in Winnipeg for the last 3 years, that your organization have a permanent and full-time staff in Winnipeg, have a fully operational location in Winnipeg, and we mean that that you are offering programming. You do not need to have a own physical location, but you're providing programming in different places within the city. And then the last is that your organization have Winnipeg representation on the board of directors. So in terms of ineligible organizations or activities, so we're really, for organizations that has a revenue over $10 million, unfortunately, you are ineligible for this granting program. The other information is that organizations with no recent grant history with the Winnipeg Foundation. So if you're just a very first time applicant for this round, unfortunately, you're also ineligible for this granting program. The others are organizations whose primary purpose is grant making or scholarships award. Organizations with activities and programs primarily outside of Winnipeg. And last, any collaborations between two organizations, either a registered charity and nonprofit or a registered charity and a registered charity. Unfortunately, that's ineligible for this granting program. So what we look for in an application, I wanted to stress that as long as an organization meets the basic eligibility criteria, you are able to apply for this granting program. So for the multi-year grant, we'll be assessing and considering 2 areas, organizational health and diversity, equity, and inclusion practice. So we define organizational health as the ability to fulfill one's mission and respond to the evolving needs of the community through effective leadership and governance. And then in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, this is the approach of embedding equity, including truth and reconciliation in your organization's operations. We understand that each organization from different sector will have its own approach to DEI. These criteria will determine an application's priority for funding, and the program seeks to support charities that are organizationally healthy and implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion practices within your organization. To assess organizational health and diversity, inclusion, and practices, we will look at key areas: leadership, values, principles, program and learning, community engagement and accountability, operations and accountability. So in terms of this session, we are aiming to notify everyone who apply of the decision in March 2025. Considerations will be made to distribute available funds equitably between across different sectors. So Megan talked about being a 360-degree funder, so we're still aiming to support different types of organization across different sectors. So in terms of equity-led organization, I want to provide a little bit more information on how we're defining that. This is a new area for us. So we're really taking a learning and developmental approach in terms of how we're working with equity-led organizations. And so for equity-led organization, we are defining them as those created by, led by, and working in one or several of the following communities: in the Indigenous community, Black, people of color, persons living with disability, 2S LGBTQ+. So we focus on these communities based on the available research we have in terms of underrepresented groups in philanthropy, but we know that there are other equity-led organizations out there as well. And so during the presentation later, I will explain how to emphasize that. So last, we also as an organization acknowledge that these are umbrella terms for a diverse spectrum of peoples who have vastly different historical experiences in Canadian society, and recognizes their use to build understanding and solidarity between communities. So other definition for our equity-led organization is that at least 2/3 of the organization's senior staff and board members belong to one or more of these communities, and over 50% of their clients and community members are from their respective communities. So in terms of organization or community partners who are going to be successful recipients of this grant, that organization will not be eligible to apply for a community grant or children in need grants during the term of your funding agreement. And you must submit an interim report each year during the funding agreement. So I will walk you through the application and the review process. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a bit of a Q&A for folks to ask some general questions about multi-year. So the application, as we mentioned, will open on October the 1st. So if you look at your grants portal, at the top banner on your right-hand side, there's a section called Open Funding Opportunities. You will find that call for proposal there. And then once you start your application and you save your application in draft form, you will see your initial applications under My Application section, which is towards the end of that page for your grant portal. In the application, the first information that you will see are some eligible questionnaire. So in order to access the full application, you must confirm your eligibility. So it will ask you if your operating revenue is 10 million or less, that if you primarily serve Winnipeggers, you must confirm that your organization complies with its bylaws, CRA regulation, and that your board is aware and authorizes the application. Last, your organization must confirm that you adhere to the Manitoba Human Rights Code. So in terms of the next question, it'll be surrounding requested amount. We are not requesting organization to provide a budget to us, but we would like to know your annual request and then your total request amount. So please determine the amount of your request based on your needs as an organization. And the Winnipeg Foundation will consider the size, the scale of your organization, including your operating revenue. So in terms of the other portions in the application, there's going to be a program area. We will just ask you to select one of each one on this list. If your organization aligns with multiple areas, please choose just one. The next section is our vital priority areas. So if applicable, select one or multiple among this list. Again, this is just for our tracking purposes. We are still a 360-degree funder, but for our report to the board, we are tracking these vital priorities. So if your organization does not align with the priorities set here, it's okay to select other benefits to community, and this will not impact your eligibility for support. So one area that's been consistent in our application is a consent to share. So you can choose yes or no in this section, so if you're comfortable with us sharing your grant information to donors or other stakeholders, we never share confidential information or details, but simply just a summary about the request. If that is manageable or okay for you, then please click yes on that consent to share. So a new questions in the applications is demographic question. This is our first time to collect demographic information in our application. So these questions were developed to help us understand who leads and is served by and work at your organization. As diversity and equity and inclusion and truth and reconciliation are foundation to our work, this information allows us to ensure that grants are equitably distributed across different range of communities. So some tips for you is that to complete the demographic questions, please talk to your leadership team, your board members to ensure that you're answering the questions. The question is in true foundation style. I've done federal grants with demographic question. It's not that onerous. It's really like couple of percentages, 75%, 50%, or decline to respond. So we're not asking you to like really count to the T. So it also in the demographic section of the application, just to allow for additional information that you can share. There's a narrative component at that section of the application that you're welcome to include that. So for your organization who might not identified as Indigenous, Black, persons of color, 2S LGBTQ+, or people living with disability, you can answer that portion in the application. So the next portion in the application will be a little bit of an organizational summary. So this is a little bit new for us again, asking you as our community partners about your organizational summary. Our tip is that, because we have a long-standing grant history with you, we just want to learn a little bit more. And maybe there are things that we don't know because we haven't asked that question as a community partner. So our tip for organizations is that when you're completing this part of the application is to treat it as you're talking to someone who is either a new employee, a new board, or a new volunteer to ensure that, we collect all the information that we need for your application. So I'm really just going to focus on how we're defining each of these areas. And then in terms of the questions for the applications, I will talk a little bit about that closer to the end of the presentation. So in terms of leadership, we define leadership as decision makers as governing bodies or individuals, so board and or senior staff, responsible for oversight and builds on so this builds on the demographic information earlier. Next, we define values and principles as organizational statement at the root and purpose of the nature and foundation of your organization. We will also ask you of your organization's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, including truth and reconciliation. Meanwhile, we define operational and financial accountability as effective practices that secure and manage the purpose of the organization and its finances. Last, we will ask you about the skills, knowledge, expertise of your board, staff, and volunteers. And since the focus is a lot on organizational summary. We will be also asking applicants to submit a letter from the board outlining your organization, how you're moving forward to help meet your mandate, your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and truth and reconciliation, and how your organization is uniquely positioned to offer services. So the other areas for organizational summary is community engagement. And we define community engagement as connections organization makes with like-minded organization or agency to further its values. We are interested in learning about some of your community partners. So as a requirement, we need a letter of recommendation from a longtime partner, community partner that you have of more than 3 years. So the other section here is we defined program and learning as services, activities, and actions an organization undertakes that meets its purpose, which involves ongoing review for improvement or meet evolving needs. There's going to be an additional information section in the application. So if you need to expand some of your answers in other sections, feel free to include that here. Each of the section will have a word count, so just be mindful on that word count of each of the section. And then last is for organizations with national scope. So there's going to be questions about your describing your Winnipeg presence, your employees, and your program offerings here in the city. So in terms of attachment, the required attachments are the most recent audited financial statements, approved operating budget for the current fiscal year, as I mentioned earlier, letters of recommendation from a longtime partner of more than 3 years, letter from the board of directors signed by the board chair and treasurer. So the other optional attachments are if you want to include your human resource policy, your current strategic plan, your diversity, equity, and inclusion mandate and policies and plan, you can also do that in this section. So when you complete your application, so in the portal, you have an opportunity to view or print your application at any time. Please review the information a second time to ensure that you've answered all the questions and that all required documents are attached. I just wanted to share that applications that are incomplete or missing documents will be considered ineligible. So I just wanted to stress, please double check your application. When your application is complete, you can click submit. And after the submission, you will see on your portal homepage, the application now appears to be under submitted application. And you will automatically receive an email from our grants portal confirming that your application has been submitted. Applications that are in progress at that time of the deadline will not be considered. And that if applications are not submitted, it will be deleted within 2 weeks after the due date. So if you like to work from your draft, we suggest you save your draft for your own files. Just general tips for the application. Please be clear and concise. Use plain language. As I mentioned earlier, answer the question as if you're talking to someone or sharing information with a new staff, volunteer, or board member. Many organizations have told us that they prepare their application on a Word document first. This allows them to craft a response, then cut and paste into the application form. You could also check your word count to match the word count in the portal. And then please make sure that you save your application in case that, something happens, there's some glitches, technical glitches, just to ensure that things are saved within your application. In terms about the deadline, just to reiterate that the portal will close 12 noon Winnipeg time. And then, again, I'm going to repeat it again. Please submit early. Double check that you have answered all the questions and attach the required documents. And then the application deadline, once again, is November 1st at noon Winnipeg time. In terms of the review process, a program officer will be assigned to your file, and they may contact you for additional information or clarification. All applicants will receive notification of the outcomes of their application in March 2025. Unfortunately, not all organizations would be funded, and some might not be funded at the level that they requested. So all the decisions for this granting program will be reviewed and decided upon the Community Impact Committee. So just wanted to share that decision-making process. So after the grant has been decided, if successful, you receive confirmation outlining the terms of the grant agreement, including the reporting or payment schedule. The multi-year grants will also include annual check-ins with your program officers using trust-based philanthropy principles. Multi-year grant recipients will not be eligible to apply for other granting programs, so community grants or one-time community grant or children and youth program grants. I also want to stress that all correspondence will be sent to the person listed in the application as the highest ranking staff member. So please ensure you check in with that person about the status of your application in March. If you was not able to receive a grant for this round, we are always available to have a follow-up discussion, and provide feedback about your application. We anticipate that this granting program will be competitive, because this is the grants are larger and longer, and relatively few organizations will be successful compared to our community grant. So in terms of support for this grant round, we're testing a few different ways offering support for everyone interested in applying. So we have dedicated staff who will be available to answer questions. I can't see them in the room right now, but it'll be myself, my colleague Anna Maria Posey, which some of you might know, and also Roxanne Tacky, who was in and around earlier, will also be available to answer the questions. We want to be consistent and transparent in terms of when we are available. So we're doing virtual and in-person drop-in for 5 weeks, starting every Tuesday. It will start next week, September the 24th, until October 22nd. Basically, this drop-in times is an opportunity for you to ask us anything about multi-year, if you have follow-up questions, and we could further dive into the application questions, the letters, all the attachment at these sessions. So we're also allotting that last week, just right before the deadline, to dedicate that really for technical questions. So we won't be doing any drop-in during that time because we want groups to really focus in on getting their applications submitted, and if there are technical glitches that our team will be able to assist you. To email us if you're interested in attending the virtual drop-in times, I will have the email at the end of that presentation that you could ask for that link. We're also doing an in-person drop-in times, again, every Tuesday. So every Tuesday, you won't forget, every Tuesday during lunchtime and end of day, we will be available from 3 to 4 at the Forks at the Agawidawin Center. So it's the Treaty Relations office, but also used to be the Muddy Waters. I'm dating myself. I'm not saying that. And so that's what we have as well. Okay, we don't have that right now. But one of the things that we also have is an application guide. So this is our first time to have a robust application guide. It will outline all the application questions, all the eligibility, as well as a checklist for yourself. At this point, we're aiming to post that on October the 1st, but if you attend our drop-in times, we'll have that ready for you at that time. So kind of lots of information that I've just shared. So we are able to answer some general questions that you may have right now. Anything specific, we can save that for the in-person or the virtual drop-in. But Megan and I are here to answer any questions you might have. I'm just going to invite Megan to come at the front.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the eligibility check.
Mm-hmm.
So just to clarify, first-time applicants, the multi-year grants is not an option for first-time applicants.
Yes, that is correct. So if you are a first-time applicant at the Winnipeg Foundation, for the Winnipeg Foundation, our next application that will be available for you will be our community grant, which will be, I believe, in March 21st, 2025. We really, want to build that relationship, that granting relationship with new applicants. So our community grant is our entry point for first-time applicants.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. And just one point to flag is that, and I'm sure you're aware of this, is that it's kind of hard to reconcile that with your objective to increase granting towards increasing equity for organizations that have not received funding.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that feedback.
And one other question. I noticed in Megan's calendar, the decision for the communities grants states February, but Naneth, I think you said March.
Okay, I can speak to that. It's the committee will likely meet in February. It takes us a little bit of time to get those notifications out, so that'll be yeah.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Hi, we were awarded a community grant January of this year. It'll be completed in March. Is that going to preclude us from applying for the multi-year?
Mm-hmm. I might need a little bit more specific about your organization. So if we could just check in at the end of the session, I'm able to support you. Nolan, there's a person at the front. Sorry.
I was just curious, if we apply for the multi-year in November and are unsuccessful, would we still be eligible to apply for the community grant in March, or is the application preclude you for the next year's community grant?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So if you were not successful for multi-year, you can apply for a community grant. We try to make sure that the timing between the multi-year grant and the community grant is open so groups can apply for that grant.
Hi. I'm actually in a similar position to the woman that spoke at the back of me, where we're also in the midst of our community grants.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I should speak with you more directly about that. I'm also wondering about the partner that needs to have like a multi-year relationship with you. So we have a number of community partners. I just wondered if you could speak a little bit more to the nature of that relationship, because that need to have a relationship with a partner for multiple years, I think could be a barrier for some folks, depending on what that relationship needs to look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Was there anything in particular that you were just trying to make sure that?
So I'll frame it another way.
Mm-hmm.
We have organizations that have been partnered with us for many years, but maybe not super directly in the Winnipeg-based work that we do.
Okay.
I've been in ED of MLP for like the last year and a half, and we've built a lot of community partners during my time in different areas, some of which we had before that, but it's hard for me to gauge, okay, what strengths are you looking for in community partners that we have? Sort of, you know, are you looking for someone that's been fiscally involved with you, like a partner? Like, I don't know if that's something you can speak to.
Yeah,
like,
I understand your question now. So for the letter of recommendation from a community partner, we're really looking at your engagement with that community partner. So how are you working with that community partner? Are you, are you working on programs together? Are you referring people to them? Are they referring people to you? Are there projects that you're working on together? So we're really looking at the engagement piece for that letter.
all right, got it. Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, thanks everyone for asking these questions, because you covered almost everything I needed to know. But I specifically was wondering about the new Children and Youth Grant, which has a deadline in February. And if we apply for a multi-year, of course, there's going to be some overlap, likely that we would apply for both. But what would happen to our outstanding application? Would it just kind of automatically get disqualified at that point if we achieved multi-year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct. Question here and at the back.
Hi.
Hello.
I was wondering about something that you said. You said that multiple organizations which receive, you said that one thing that would make an organization ineligible to receive a grant to receive the multi-year grant in particular would be if they are collaborating with other organizations that are also receiving the multi-year grant.
Yeah. So just to clarify, in our community grant, we do have a collaboration kind of stream where applicants to organizations can apply for a grant, and that is usually to support them for administrative use or to really work on a root cause as an issue. Because for multi-year, we're really focusing on organization. So collaboration, having two applicants for one application, we're unable to assess that request properly.
Okay, so it's more of if two organizations receive grants from the Winnipeg Foundation, it's not that they can't work together, it's that they can't apply together.
So if there are two organizations that are working together, both organizations can apply separately.
Yeah.
Yes. And then if you think that that organization is a good could provide a good letter of recommendation for your organization, you can ask that organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I clarify? No.
Can I add a little bit of
Okay.
clarification? I think so. Just to build on what Nineth was saying, that each individual organization will apply, but 100%, if you, through your course of your work, you collaborate with other organizations, that's all good, and that won't disqualify you from an application. Is that kind of what you're asking?
That was
Okay.
really what I was asking.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for the great session. My question is in regards to revenue. Is that revenue from all streams? Our organization has service purchase agreements with the province. Is that considered revenue?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, we would consider that as revenue. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for the info session. So just a quick question. So say we were granted the multi-year grants, would we still be able to apply for major capital grants? Because you did mention community grants, but I don't know about major capital.
Yeah, major capital
Yes.
is good. We know that major capital is kind of like a unique one-time thing that organizations need. So that's okay for organizations successful for multi-year to apply for a major capital grant.
Awesome, perfect.
Hi, when you were explaining eligibility criteria, you indicated that if the organization was outside of Winnipeg, that it was ineligible. But then later on, it was mentioned that if the people involved in the program were all from Winnipeg and it was not in Winnipeg, that they are eligible. So I'm just wondering, so for instance, like summer camp outside of Winnipeg that serves all children from Winnipeg.
So I like in any other granting program that we have, the organization must demonstrate the connection to Winnipeg. So if the location is outside but primarily serve Winnipeg, then that's okay. I think it's more for like organizations that are truly physically located somewhere else out of Winnipeg without any connections with people in Winnipeg. Yeah.
Can you clarify that persons living with a disability includes mental health and addiction?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
I just have a question for Megan. In your presentation, you were talking about some of the inequities of funding in some of those categories, and I wondered if you gathered any information on the category of people living with disabilities, and if you got any stats on the inequity there in terms of the overall amount of monies funded.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not any great Canadian data on that particular equity-led community organization. The two reports that I cited are really great Canadian data. There's a little bit of data for the United States, but unfortunately, we don't have any great local Canadian information on that yet.
Oh, hi. I just got a quick question. There's kind of a twofold question with regards to the DEI component of the senior management. First of all, does senior management include board, or is that just operational? And if, for instance, if it's an Indigenous organization with regards to the senior management, does that also include people that are on the DEI list that might not be Indigenous? For instance, like, I mean, if we've got two Indigenous people and then there's one person that's on the LGBTQ scale, does that count in that equation, or does it all have to be Indigenous?
So the first question, to answer your first question, in terms of senior management, we are looking at that as operations, and then the board. So in the demographic question, there's we will specify that leadership, senior management, and then another question about the board. And then in terms of a little bit more information about the demographics of senior management or the board, there's also other questions within the application that looks at people of color, Black, 2S, LGBTQ+. So you'll be able to answer that in the application as well.
Hi.
Hello.
Firstly, I also want to thank you very much for doing this and how helpful the staff is at the foundation for those of us who spend a lot of time online in the portal. But my question is, many years ago, you also had a multi-year grant situation where it was 3 years, and that had a limited run. Is the intent with this that you could still, that the intake would still happen every year?
Yeah, so we have committed to hosting this call for proposals for 2 years. So in 2025 and again, well, I guess 2024 and again in 2025. One of the things that I don't think we mentioned that I'm comfortable sharing is that our board has set aside $4.5 million for this year, which is a total commitment of $16 million. $18 million, sorry, bad at math. $18 million over 4 years. And so when we add a second cohort to that, you can see what that does to our discretionary grant making budget. And so again, the commitment is to offer 2 cohorts. Neneth mentioned a number of times, this is really new for us. I've been at the Winnipeg Foundation now for 25 years, and we've never done something quite like this. And so there's lots of opportunities for us to learn. We've already heard a little bit of feedback from those of you in the room today about our approach, and we anticipate that we'll continue to learn. So again, the commitment is to offer it this year and next, and see what we learn from that and see kind of what we do next. When you refer to the first round of multi-year grants, we did that one again. We offered it in 2017 and 2018. I'll be honest, our plan was to take a little bit of a break in 2019 and then reintroduce it in 2020. The world had other plans. And so we obviously in 2020 rediverted our efforts to really provide immediate COVID relief to community organizations. So don't know what's going to happen in 2027. So that's a little bit where we're at now for our multi-year and our commitment to multi-year.
Okay, I have the next question. Sorry. I was wondering if somehow I managed to get the multi-year grant, would I be able to apply or sort of collaborate with another organization that they will be applying for the children and youth grant? My name won't be there, but we will be carrying out the project together.
I just want to make sure that I see the person. I'm just blanking out right now on the specifics on eligibility for children and youth, unfortunately. So may I ask who asked that question? Okay. I will make sure that by the end of today that I'm able to answer your question.
Yeah, it's Eve Sutiriado from the Canadian Muslim Women's Institute.
Okay.
Thank you.
My question was answered, but I just wanted to say thank you for hearing us. I know that that's been a big thing, is multi-year and just lots of flexibility organizationally. And I know that's not just our organization. I know that's why there's so many people here. And so I just want to say thank you for listening.
Thank you. We really wanted to bring it back, and so we're just glad that we're able to bring it back.
Hi. Someone just asked this question about the equity of our board. So in your portal, there'll be a section where we identified our board members. Okay. I know who they are. They just like having to have them self-declare.
Yeah.
And another question is, we have a grant that's technically the report's not due for 2 years. So should we finish that up and
Yes, and so I feel like some of the final report questions we might need to connect a little bit because it will really depend on your organization. I feel like you had a question and someone back there had one, and then another person here had a final report question.
Okay.
Yeah,
because I'm sure our ED, I'd like to get started because
Of course.
time
Yeah.
is of the essence,
Yeah.
and a lot of our how we function and
Yes.
funded. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, could an organization apply for the 2025 community grant and then apply for the 2025 multi-year grant if the project is completed? Yes?
Yeah, it's really up to you as an organization how you want to time your requests at the Winnipeg Foundation. As long as you're able to complete that grant or based on your eligibility has successfully completed a grant, that you'll be able to do that. Yeah.
Hi, I just have a question about how much we are able to request.
So does it depend on how much our annual budget is, or is there like a maximum amount, say a percentage of your annual budget that you're able to request for multi-year funding?
So our advice to community partners is ask based on what you need as an organization. I said earlier, we'll be looking at the scale of your organization, your annual operating budget. So those will be considered in the assessment of your application. But definitely ask based on what you need as an organization.
One.
Other one.
Thank you for all this information. Just to double check, now we are currently having 2 community grants, developing them, one by ourselves and the other with collaboration. Until these grants are not reported, we can't apply, or it's basically that as organization, we should have already reported in the past year's grant.
So like I said, the final report, I feel like it's a little tricky because we will need to be on our system to check that. So please come forward. If that was your question, I'll give you my business cards so you can email me and we could help you determine your eligibility.
Any other hands?
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm hoping to see each and every one of you at our virtual or in-person drop-in every Tuesday starting next week, September the 24th until October the 22nd. The application guide will be up on our website on October the 1st. So that will have that comprehensive, outline all the questions, the tips to answer the question, a checklist and all that. But if you attend our drop-in sessions, that will have that ready for you as well. And then email us if you have any questions about general eligibility. I have my business cards here. So those with questions about eligibility and final reports, if you like, I know where they are, but just in case I miss someone, I will give you my business cards today. But before we end, I just wanted to share that it was just so nice to see everyone today. Lots of great engaging questions. It's nice to reconnect with everyone. We just want to say thank you to the Central Cottrell Franco-Manitoban staff for helping coordinate our sound and to be our host for the event today. Also, thank you to Shelley's Indigenous Bistro for providing our snacks during our info session. And if there's still some more, please grab some and take them on the go. And again, thank you for joining us and take care of each other. See you in a few weeks.